Ladies and gentlemen, when God wakes you up between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., it's not just a sleep disturbance, it's a spiritual disturbance. It's a divine disruption designed to shake you out of routine and wake you into revelation. See, you have to understand something. God doesn't operate according to your comfort zone. He operates according to your calling. And sometimes, in order to redirect your steps, he has to interrupt your sleep. We often think that when we wake up in the middle of the night, it's because our body is restless. But what if it's not your body that's restless? What if it's your spirit that's being stirred? God is the master strategist. He knows when your environment is finally quiet enough for your soul to hear him. In the noise of the day, your mind is cluttered with texts, tasks, and timelines. But in those still early hours, your spiritual frequency is unclogged. Heaven can finally get through without interference. See, divine disruption is never random. God doesn't waste movement. When he wakes you up like that, it's because he's trying to get your attention in a way that matters. He's trying to reposition your focus. You've been moving, but have you been moving in the right direction? You've been building, but have you been building what he actually called you to build? That disruption isn't to annoy you. It's to alert you. Sometimes we're so busy asking God to bless our plans that we forget to ask him for his plans. So he wakes you up in the middle of the night, not because he's punishing you, but because he's redirecting you. That's not judgment. That's grace. That's favor. That's a God who refuses to let you keep running in the wrong direction. That's a God who loves you too much to let you keep sleeping on your purpose. When you're woken up at that hour, it's not a sign of spiritual attack. It's a signal for spiritual alignment. That's the time when heaven starts transmitting instructions. That's the hour when generals get briefed. That's the window when kingdom assignments get revealed. You're not just being interrupted, you're being recruited. And it's not always going to feel good, because let's be real, obedience rarely feels convenient. But favor doesn't flow through convenience. It flows through obedience. It flows through surrender. And surrender doesn't just happen in church with lifted hands. It happens at 3:37 a.m. when God whispers something into your spirit and you choose to listen instead of rolling over and going back to bed. Because in that moment, he's not just talking to you, he's trusting you. He's trusting you to carry something sacred. He's trusting you to respond. Every divine disruption is a setup for divine direction. You've been praying for clarity. You've been asking God to show you what's next. And now he's waking you up, not to torment you, but to teach you. Not to pull you from sleep, but to pull you into strategy. That idea you've been sitting on, that vision you've been doubting, that next step you've been hesitant to take, God is using that interruption to confirm what he's already placed inside you. He's waking up your body to wake up your belief. Let's be clear, God doesn't need your permission to move in your life, but he does desire your participation. He's not going to force your destiny on you. He's going to invite you into it. That early morning interruption is an invitation to clarity, to alignment, to strategy, to movement. It's an invitation to come up higher, think bigger, and walk bolder. When he wakes you up, he's saying, let me speak to your future while the world is still asleep. There's something sacred about the hours between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. The world is quiet. The streets are still. The noise has died down, and the distractions that dominate your day have finally retreated into silence. It's in this silence that heaven speaks the loudest. This is not just an early morning, it's the quiet hour of revelation. And if you've been wondering why you keep waking up during that time, it's because God has chosen that specific moment to download divine insight into your spirit. During the day, you're pulled in 100 directions. Your phone is ringing, your schedule is full, people are talking, notifications are flying. You're busy responding to what's urgent, not always what's important. Your mind is occupied, your attention is divided. But in those early morning hours, none of that exists. It's just you and God, no filters, no performance, no audience. That's the hour where revelation is released, because it's the only time your spirit is truly ready to receive it without resistance. God is a God of timing. He doesn't just speak whenever. It's not random. He speaks with intention, and he often reserves his deepest transformational revelations for those still hours, because that's when you're most sensitive to his whisper. It's not that he wasn't speaking before. It's that now, for the first time all day, you're finally quiet enough to hear him. Revelation isn't loud. It doesn't force itself on you. It's not chaotic. It flows in stillness, in obedience, in sensitivity. That's why God wakes you up while the world sleeps. Because in that moment, you're not distracted by everyone else's opinions. You're not clouded by your own insecurities. You're clear. And when you're clear, you're teachable. When you're teachable, you're ready. Some of the most profound direction you will ever receive will come in those quiet hours. God will speak something into your spirit that doesn't even make full sense yet, but it sits deep. It stirs something. It anchors you. That one sentence, that one nudge, that one vision could shift the entire trajectory of your life. Because when God reveals something in the quiet, it's not always for immediate release. Sometimes it's a seed, not a harvest. It's meant to be carried, nurtured, protected. The quiet hour is not just the time for downloads. It's the time for deposits. You're receiving wisdom now that will make sense later. You have to recognize the weight of that moment, because the enemy wants you to dismiss it. He wants you to roll over and go back to sleep. He wants you to believe it's just insomnia or anxiety or a restless mind, but this isn't restlessness, it's readiness. Your spirit is awake because heaven is at your door and God is trying to get something to you. Revelation is not information, it's divine truth that rearranges your reality. It changes how you see, how you move, how you believe. And when you get that kind of clarity, you don't walk into your day, you walk in knowing. You walk in alignment. You walk in boldness. Because you're not just moving on instinct, you're moving on insight. There's a reason prophetic people, creative innovators, strategic leaders, and intercessors often find themselves stirred in the early hours. That's the window of heaven's broadcast. That's when downloads come for the next book, the next sermon, the next business move, the next prayer assignment. That's the time when God breathes strategy into your spirit without the noise of logic arguing back. In the quiet hour, your spirit leads and your ego takes a backseat. Your faith rises and your fear can't find a foothold. You're not performing in the quiet, you're receiving. You're not proving anything, you're positioning yourself for what's next. When God wakes you up between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., it's not just to disturb your rest, it's to awaken your responsibility. That moment is not random interruption. It is a divine call to intercession. And if you keep treating it like an inconvenience, you'll miss the opportunity to partner with heaven in changing the atmosphere on earth. This isn't about you losing sleep. This is about you gaining access to pray, to cover, to war in the spirit on behalf of people, purposes, and plans that are bigger than your personal agenda. You got to understand something. God doesn't need your attention at 3:14 a.m. because he's lonely. He's not bored. He's not needy. He's strategic. When he wakes you, it's because something is moving in the spirit realm that requires your agreement, your voice, your authority. Intercession is not passive. It's powerful. It's when you step into the gap for someone else. It's when you feel a burden that doesn't belong to you, but it hits you like it does. That spiritual weight, that's God trusting you with someone else's breakthrough. It's in those quiet moments that God gives you the faces, the names, the situations. Sometimes he'll drop someone in your spirit you haven't thought about in years. Sometimes you'll wake up and feel like crying and you don't even know why. That's not your emotion. It's their warfare. You're being called into a place where your voice becomes a weapon and your obedience becomes a lifeline. You might never see the result with your natural eyes, but in the spirit, walls are falling, chains are breaking, and destiny is being preserved. Because you got up and said yes. See, the thing about intercession is that it rarely feels convenient. It often feels like interruption because it doesn't show up when you're prepared. It shows up when you're surrendered. It comes in the form of restlessness, a heaviness, a sudden alertness in your spirit. And you're thinking it's just a bad night's sleep, but heaven is sounding the alarm because while you're trying to get back to bed, someone's life is hanging in the balance. While you're turning over in frustration, the Holy Spirit is urging you to get on your face. This is spiritual maturity. Recognizing that every moment with God is not about personal blessing. Sometimes it's about spiritual responsibility. Sometimes God doesn't want to talk to you about your breakthrough. He wants to use you for theirs. That's when you know you've been promoted in the Spirit. When God can trust you not just to receive, but to release. Not just to ask, but to intercede. That's when you know your walk is shifting. Because he doesn't just come to comfort you. He comes to commission you in personama. He does not have been commissioned anymore. You don't get any lights. There's no glamorous applause. Most of the time, no one will even know what you're carrying. But heaven knows. And hell knows. Hell knows when a parachute intercessor is awake. Hell knows when somebody with authority starts to pray. Hell knows when you step into that spiritual gap and declare, not on my watch. That's when atmosphere shifts. That's when assignments are canceled. That's when healing gets activated and confusion gets shut down. Sometimes your prayers in those early hours are the only reason someone else makes it through their darkest moment, and you'll never know it. You'll never get the thank you. You'll never hear the full story. But God saw it. God heard it. And that's why he keeps waking you. Because while others are sleeping, you are standing. While others are worrying, you are warring. While others are silent, you are speaking life into dead places. That's not interruption. That's intercession. That's not inconvenience. That's assignment. You weren't woken up to panic. You were woken up to pray. You were woken up because heaven trusted you with the weight of what someone else couldn't carry on their own. Before God promotes you publicly, he prepares you privately. And the thing about preparation is that it often happens in the dark. It happens in silence. It happens in obscurity. It happens when nobody's watching, when no one is applauding, when no one is calling your name. And that's why he wakes you up between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. Because promotion doesn't start on the stage. It starts in the secret place. Before he elevates you in front of people, he equips you in private. Because God doesn't just want to give you influence. He wants to make sure you have the integrity to carry it. You can't carry a public platform with a private prayer life that's falling apart. So he begins the process of shaping you when no one else can see you. He trains you in silence so that your character is built strong enough to support the weight of your calling. Those early morning hours are not punishment, they're preparation. That's the time when God deposits clarity, discipline, and direction into your spirit. That's when he corrects, refines, molds, and matures you. That's when he strips away what can't go with you to the next level. He knows where you're headed, but he also knows what has to die in you before you get there. You might be asking for a platform, but God is developing your posture. You might be praying for visibility, but God is building your vision. Because when he promotes you, it has to be sustainable. And if you bypass preparation, your promotion will destroy you. The truth is, God's not just interested in getting you somewhere fast. He's committed to getting you there ready. He's not looking for speed. He's looking for stability. And stability doesn't come from talent. It comes from time in his presence. It comes from quiet obedience. It comes from hidden work. Those mornings when you wake up and wonder why you're up again, why your spirit is stirred again, why your heart is heavy again. That's preparation. God is teaching you how to carry weight before he adds visibility. He's stretching your capacity before he gives you new responsibility, because you can't pour into others when you haven't been poured into. He's teaching you how to lead in the dark so that when the lights are on, you're not shaken by the pressure. People see the stage. God sees the stamina. People celebrate the elevation. God measures the endurance, and that's what he's building in you while you're still in the shadows. Promotion always looks glamorous from the outside, but it's not about clout. It's about calling. And calling will always require crushing. It will always involve pruning. You're not just being prepared to be seen. You're being prepared to serve. And service takes strength. It takes humility. It takes discernment. So when he wakes you up, when he sits you down with your journal, when he gives you a word and won't let you go back to sleep, it's because you're in training. You're not in delay. You're in development. God is not ignoring your prayers. He's answering them in a deeper way than you expected. He's not giving you the spotlight. You asked for that. And when you start seeing those early hours as sacred instead of inconvenient, you'll realize he's doing something eternal in you. He's laying foundation. He's shaping the kind of leader who can carry favor without falling in love with fame. He's forming the kind of vessel that can hold revelation without becoming arrogant. Because in the kingdom, promotion doesn't come from performance. It comes from posture, from brokenness, from obedience in the unseen moments. There's a pattern in the Bible. Every person God used greatly went through a season of obscurity. Joseph was in a prison. Moses was in the desert. David was in the field. Jesus was in the wilderness. The process is never wasted. It's precise. And if you're being awakened in this season, it's because heaven is activating something in you that requires intimacy, not applause. He's not just preparing the door, he's preparing you for the door. Because when it opens, who you are in private will determine whether you can stay there. When God wakes you up between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., it's not just a moment. It's a move. It's a quiet invitation to something deeper, something higher. He's not trying to disrupt your rest just to prove he can. He's inviting you into partnership, not the kind that makes you feel important, but the kind that makes you impactful. Because God isn't just trying to work for you. He's trying to work through you. And in order to do that, he needs your agreement, not just your awareness. He needs your yes in the dark long before the results show up in the light. Partnership with God doesn't begin when you stand on platforms or gain recognition. It begins when you say, "Speak, Lord, your servant is listening," while the world is still sleeping. It begins when you wake up with an unshakable sense that heaven is near and waiting. It's not an accident that your eyes open at those hours. That's a divine scheduling. That's a holy summons. And when you're being summoned, it means you're being included. God could do it without you, but he chooses to partner with you. That's not obligation, that's honor. Partnerships are birthed in intimacy. He doesn't collaborate with strangers. He communes with friends. That's why he calls you at 3:27 a.m., not just to pray, not just to listen, but to walk with him. He wants to reveal blueprints, ideas, intercessory burdens, prophetic insight, kingdom assignments. But he doesn't shout those things in the middle of your busy day. He whispers them in the hours of stillness, because those who partner with him must learn to move by whisper, not by noise. If you can't catch the whisper, you'll miss the strategy. You've been asking God to show you your purpose. You've been praying for clarity, for direction, for next steps. And every time, if you open your eyes at 4:11 a.m., with your heart beating fast and your thoughts stirred, you call it insomnia. But what if that's not sleeplessness? What if it's sacred access? What if it's God sitting across from your spirit, waiting to share something that can only be delivered in silence? This is where the partnership is forged. In the fire of obedience, when no one else is around to validate you, in the early hour agreement that says, Lord, I'll go where you send me, say what you give me, carry what you place on me. Partnership with God isn't always convenient. It won't always make sense to your logic, but it will always be anchored in your purpose, because God doesn't partner with people based on popularity. He partners based on availability. He's not looking for the most qualified. He's looking for the most surrendered, the ones who are willing to wake up when he calls, the ones who will put down their phones, grab a journal, and posture themselves to receive something eternal, the ones who understand that when heaven moves, it looks for humans to move through. And if you say yes, you don't just get to watch what God is doing, you get to participate in it. The early morning hours are the meeting place for heavenly collaboration. It's where God plants kingdom strategies in earthly vessels. That's where he gives instruction, warning, confirmation, and direction. That's where he allows you to carry something that will bless nations, not because you're special, but because you're available. Not because you're perfect, but because you're willing. And willingness will always attract divine instruction. Partnership with God means you're no longer just praying about your life. You're interceding for his will. You're not just making plans. You're building what he's shown you. You're not just hoping for breakthroughs. You're releasing breakthroughs through your obedience. That kind of partnership changes everything. It changes how you live, how you move, how you listen, how you lead. Because when God partners with you, he deposits in you the kind of weight that doesn't come from hustle. It comes from heaven. And it's in those early morning moments when the world is asleep and your spirit is wide awake that you realize God didn't just wake you. He called you, not to impress people, but to impact eternity, not to chase results, but to carry revelation, not to follow trends, but to establish truth. When God keeps waking you up between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., you're not just being interrupted, you're extremely trained. He's not trying to inconvenience you. He's trying to increase your capacity. This is not about restlessness. This is about readiness. You're being trained to hear. And hearing in the spirit is not like hearing in the natural. In the natural, you can hear anything by simply being present. But in the spirit, hearing is connected to posture. It's connected to alignment. It's connected to obedience. God isn't just speaking to be heard. He's speaking to see if you're listening. And if you are, he'll train your ears to detect his whisper in the noise of life. Hearing God is not about volume. It's about sensitivity. He doesn't shout over your distractions. He doesn't compete with your busyness. He waits for the moment your heart is still enough, quiet enough, humble enough to lean in. And often that moment comes in the early morning when everything around you is settled. That's when your spirit is most open. That's when your soul is least defensive. That's when your heart is tender and your guard is down. So he speaks, sometimes through a thought, sometimes through a burden, sometimes through a word you can't shake. And if you listen, you'll start to recognize the rhythm of his voice. God is a father, and fathers train their children, not because they want to control them, but because they want to prepare them. And part of that preparation is learning how to hear clearly and move quickly. He doesn't just want you. hear when it's convenient. He wants you to hear when it counts. Because in the life of a believer, timing matters. One whisper from God at the right time can save you years of frustration. One instruction in the quiet can protect you from disaster. One download in the dark can lead to generations of impact. But you have to be trained to catch it. That's why you're waking up now. Not because you've mastered it, but because you're in training. You're learning to recognize the difference between your voice and his. You're learning to separate inspiration from instruction. You're learning to sense when something is just a thought and when something is a divine prompting. And God is patient in that process. He'll speak again and again until you learn to respond. Not punishing you with these early hours. He's promoting you. He's stretching your spiritual senses. He's building a level of discernment in you that isn't fragile, that doesn't need a microphone or a miracle to believe, just a whisper, just a stillness, just a knowing. In a world full of noise and confusion, God is raising up people who are not just spiritually gifted, but spiritually trained, people who don't just operate in emotion, but in discernment. People who don't need an entire choir to sense his presence, just a flicker, just a shift in the atmosphere. And that kind of awareness doesn't come from sermons or songs. It comes from time in his presence, time in the quiet, time with no agenda, but to listen. You don't develop that kind of spiritual acuity in crowds. You develop it in consecration, in solitude, in silence, in the secret place at 4:02 a.m. when everything in your flesh wants to go back to bed, but your spirit knows you've been summoned to grow. You are not being awakened randomly. You are being discipled. You're being fine-tuned. God is tuning your ears like an instrument so you can pick up the frequency of heaven no matter where you are. So that when you walk into a room, you know what's going on before anyone says a word. So that when someone talks to you, you don't just hear their mouth, you hear their heart. So that when you make decisions, you don't have to guess. You've already heard. That kind of clarity, that kind of flow, that kind of divine intelligence comes from training. And training always starts with discipline, waking up early, leaning in, writing it down, praying it out, staying in that moment a little longer than your flesh wants to. Because every time you say yes, every time you obey, every time you listen, your hearing becomes sharper, your sensitivity increases, your faith gets stronger, and your trust in his voice becomes